Good afternoon. Welcome to St Peter Mancroft Church, whether you're watching online or whether you're in church. If you're in church, please carry on with your visit and enjoy these lovely surroundings. My name's Catherine Waddams. I'm a licensed lay minister here, and this is our weekly reflection, which we hold at this time. So, how are you enjoying the election campaign? Hollow laughter. Are you one of the 7 million who watched the rather bad-tempered televised leaders' debate last night? If so, has it affected how you plan to vote? Or indeed, whether you will vote? It's almost 5 years since we last had a chance to vote in a general election, so this summer is a precious opportunity for us to have our say, to voice our own priorities through the ballot box. I added up that this will be the 15th general election in which I have voted, and I was closely involved as a teenager in mock elections and canvassing in the 2 elections in the mid-1960s, when I was too young to vote myself. I'm not sure that I learnt very much from last night's noisy debate, but there is so much information and misinformation to process. We may be tempted, like many others, to give it a miss and not vote at all. Because of our electoral system, we may feel that our vote has little effect. I think it is unlikely that I will again be in the position I was in 1983, when our constituency MP in Leicester was ousted by 7 votes. A lot of recounts. There I did feel that my vote had counted, though not enough, and there was much regret at not getting another 8 people to come and vote for, quote, my candidate. Even if I had done, and our sitting MP had been re-elected, as he was at the subsequent 4 elections until his death, it wouldn't have had much effect on the government majority of 144, which was counted as a landslide victory for Mrs. Thatcher. So why bother? Some might say we owe it to all those people who fought for this right to have our say. Perhaps this argument particularly appeals to women, since it is not so long ago that suffragists and suffragettes argued and took direct action so that women should be able to vote alongside men. And of course the vote was initially only for men who owned property. It wasn't until 1918, just over 100 years ago, that property requirements were abolished. Now all adults are able to vote. It is the essence of a democratic process. Each adult has the same size voice as every other. That's surprisingly rare in our community. People with higher levels of education and income are much more likely to be in positions of power and influence. And people with more money have a bigger voice in markets through their spending power. But we all have voting opportunities, including people who have no fixed address, as this week's big issue is keen to point out, and to encourage people to register. But only about 2/3 of people who are registered to vote do so in UK general elections, and only about half again in local elections. Turnout varies regionally. It's highest in Scotland and the southeast of England, and by other characteristics. Citizens who are older, from a richer background, own their own house, are all more likely to vote than average. Tenants, immigrants, people from an ethnic minority background are less likely both to register and to cast their vote. Many people do find it difficult to see the relevance of national or local government to their lives. And of course, requiring photo ID may deter some people and may be more challenging for less privileged members of society. What about religion? Well, Christians are more likely to vote than average, with Anglicans topping the bill, you may be proud to know. 84% vote in general elections. Muslims, on the other hand, are less likely to vote than average, only 65%, according to the British Election Survey. Anglicans tend to vote for Conservative and right-wing parties, reflecting part of that old adage that the Church of England is the Tory party at prayer. Though I doubt whether most Conservative voters would still classify themselves as Church of England, so it doesn't work that way round. In the latest figures for last year, Anglicans were the only group where more people say they would vote Conservative than Labour. Labour had a lead overall and in every other faith subgroup, including people who declare themselves non-religious. Of course, this relationship is not a simple causal one. For example, the average age of Anglicans is higher than average, and older people are more likely to vote for Conservative or right-wing parties than younger electors. But I still find that feature very striking. So given this pattern in the country as a whole, how does our faith influence us as individual voters? When the election was announced, I thought this might be an opportunity for us to encourage God's kingdom on earth, at a time when the world news on war and climate change disaster seem ever bleaker. But then I remembered how often Jesus had to point out that his way is not a political one. And while voting is an important expression of our involvement in society, God's kingdom is just as likely to be nurtured by exercising our voice in other ways. One may be bringing the kingdom's values into conversations around the election, including with candidates who may canvass us. How far do they respect and want to encourage whatever we see as the characteristics of the kingdom? St. Peter Mancroft is exploring hosting a hustings at which just such questions can be put to our local candidates. Of course, there are different ways among Christians on what social system can best encourage God's kingdom. Some emphasize the importance of individual choice, others of caring for the most vulnerable in society, and they may lead to different choices of where to put your X on the ballot. The ballot box is one way of registering our own views. Important, even if it has little direct influence on who gets elected, either at constituency or national level. But one of its greatest values may be to make us think about how we can use our voice in so many ways. Perhaps through noisy protest when that is appropriate. Perhaps through petitions and challenges to people who are in power, locally or nationally. Perhaps through quiet individual conversations where we listen as well as speak our own views. There really didn't seem to be much listening in last night's debate. Sometimes it's our actions which may speak louder than words. So we may be nurturing God's kingdom more directly through small individual acts of kindness to strangers or at home, or by welcoming people to our church, or through joint initiatives like becoming a church of sanctuary under the umbrella of Norwich, City of Sanctuary, or exploring how best to offer help to people who are in debt, following the meeting this week to identify what talents and time volunteers would like to offer. This may not directly solve those big questions of human survival on earth and the horrors of war, oppression, and destitution. But we do all have some opportunity to help express God's kingdom. The electoral process is one way to exercise our voice, both through the ballot box and in discussions around the campaign. I hope you'll enjoy the next few weeks.